When this happened, I was 20 years old. At the time, it was just me and my mom living in our house. Even though it was only the two of us, our house was pretty big. The neighborhood we lived in wasn't totally isolated, but it wasn't super busy either. It was the kind of place that felt just right for the two of us. And since the house was ours, we knew the area really well. Back then, I was working for a private company. I'd leave for work around 10 in the morning and usually get back by 8 in the evening. During that time, my mom would be home alone. That night, after dinner, my mom and I went to our separate rooms to sleep. She fell asleep early, but I usually stayed up a bit later. Around 2 a.m., just as I was about to fall asleep, I suddenly heard someone lightly knocking on our front door. Our doorbell hadn't been working for the past few days, so anyone who came by had to knock. All the lights in the house were off, and I didn't turn mine on either. I quietly walked over to the door, using the dim light from outside, and looked through the peephole. No one was there. At first, I didn't think much of it. I was half asleep, and it didn't really seem like a big deal. Since I didn't see anyone outside, I figured maybe I imagined it. After all, no one ever shows up at our house that late, and we rarely get visitors anyway. So I turned away from the door and started heading back to my room. But just before going in, I decided to check on my mom real quick. She was fast asleep. As soon as I stepped into my room, there was another knock at the door. This time, I wasn't half asleep. I was fully awake, and I was sure someone was actually out there. I rushed back to the door and looked through the peephole again. This time, I saw two men standing outside. They looked like they were around 30. I raised my voice a little and asked, "Who is it?" One of them answered, "Hey, sorry to bother you so late." They said they'd been in a car accident and their friend was in really bad shape. They told me they'd already called an ambulance, but their friend was bleeding badly and needed some water and a towel. They asked, "Could you please help us out?" Right then, I felt stuck in the biggest dilemma of my life. I couldn't decide whether or not I should open the door. My gut was telling me not to, but the way they were talking made it seem like they were genuinely in trouble. In the end, I decided to open the door, because they really seemed like they needed help. I went to grab a towel and some water, and that's when my mom woke up after hearing the voices. She asked me what was going on, and I explained everything to her. But she stopped me right away and said, "Don't open that door." She walked over to the door herself and looked through the peephole. Then she asked them what they needed. They repeated the same story they had told me, but my mom firmly said, "Sorry, we can't help you." One of the guys responded, "Please, we're really in trouble. We knocked on other houses, but everyone's probably asleep and no one's answering." I looked through the peephole again. This time, something felt off about them. While one of them was doing the talking, the other kept looking around in a shady way, like he didn't want to be seen. Then I noticed something near his waist. It looked like a gun, maybe a revolver, tucked under his shirt. I couldn't see the whole thing, but just enough to make me panic inside. That's when I knew for sure. I wasn't opening that door. From the way they talked and how they were acting, it was clear. They weren't here because they needed help. They had something else in mind. My mom quietly pulled me away from the door and whispered, "Call 911. I did exactly that. I told the dispatcher that two men were outside our house trying to get in, and that one of them might be armed. They said officers would arrive in about 10 minutes. Right after I made the call, the two guys knocked on the door again, but this time, we stayed completely silent. Eventually, they stopped knocking. Then we heard footsteps. Sounded like they were walking around the house. We quickly checked every door and window to make sure everything was locked. Thankfully, we'd already locked everything earlier. Then we heard noise coming from the back door. They were trying to get in from the back now. I stood there, holding a bat. My mom stood frozen beside me, too scared to move. And then, everything went quiet. A few seconds later, we heard a car pull up. It was the police. They knocked on our door, and we opened it. The police searched the whole house and the area around it. But they didn't find anyone, and there hadn't been any car accident nearby like those two guys claimed, which meant they had come with some other dangerous plan. Since that night, we've been way more careful. We make sure to keep self-defense tools at home now. Even today, I sometimes think about it. If my mom hadn't woken up that night, I might have opened the door, and who knows what could have happened to us. This happened about 2 months ago. My whole family had gone to visit some relatives, but I didn't go because I'm not really close with that side of the family. So, I was home alone. I spent most of the day just scrolling through my phone, but after a while, it got boring. By evening, I thought about calling a couple of my friends, Pan and John, to hang out. But when I called Pan, he told me he was also home alone and suggested I come over to his place instead. His house is in a pretty secluded area, and the rooftop is a great spot to chill, so I agreed and we met up at his place around 8 p.m. After we talked for a bit, John got a call and said he had to leave right away for some personal reason, so he took off quickly. Pan and I stayed on the rooftop and kept hanging out. At some point, I started feeling like someone else was inside the house. From the rooftop, I could hear faint sounds coming from downstairs. I asked Pan about it, but he said he didn't hear anything. I figured maybe I was just overthinking it. After a while, I went downstairs to use the bathroom. While I was in there, I heard footsteps. Slow ones, like someone was trying not to get noticed. I quickly came out and looked around, but there was no one there. I didn't see any sign of anyone. When I got back upstairs, I casually asked Pan if he'd come downstairs. He said no and asked me why. I just brushed it off. I didn't want to admit I was feeling kind of tipsy from the drinks and might have been imagining stuff. A little later, Pan said we could just crash at his place for the night, so we planned to go down and watch a movie in his room. But right when we were about to lock the door to his room, we both felt like someone was in his parents' room. And this time, it wasn't just me. Pan felt it too. We walked over to his parents' room, but we didn't really check it properly. We just took a quick glance, and since we didn't see anything at first, Pan didn't seem too worried. It was the first time anything like this had happened to him. But for me, this was the third time something weird like this had happened, so I was definitely more on edge. Anyway, we tried to focus on the movie. But then, out of nowhere, we heard footsteps again, this time coming from inside the house. Both of us started getting nervous. Since we were together, it wasn't completely terrifying, but we were still scared. First, we checked the main door, and that's when things got worse, because the main door was unlocked. But we were both sure Pan had locked it after John left. And just then, we heard quick footsteps coming from the living room, and what we saw completely froze us. A man wearing a mask was standing there, holding a knife. As soon as he saw us, he ran toward us. We didn't have anything to defend ourselves with, but weirdly, he didn't try to hurt us. He just pushed us out of the way and ran straight for the front door. He didn't even look back, just took off into the night. We ran after him, but once we got outside, there was no sign of him anywhere. We called the cops, and they searched the whole area, but they didn't find anything. Nothing in the house was taken. Everything was exactly where it had been. We didn't sleep at all that night. We just kept asking each other the same question. That guy had been in the house for a while. If he wanted to steal something, he had plenty of chances, but he didn't. So why did he come into the house at all? I work the night shift at a gas station, late at night. There usually aren't many cars. Especially after 11 p.m., it's pretty much dead. This happened back in 2022. Around 1 in the morning, I was sitting in the office. I was the only one there, and there weren't any cars around either. From inside, I could see both gas pumps. All of a sudden, I noticed a black car pull up a little ways from the station. Not right at it. It didn't come any closer. Just sat there. 10 minutes went by, and it still hadn't moved. I figured someone might have just stopped for a bit and would head out soon. But then, the driver got out. He had long hair and tattoos covering both arms, from what I could tell. He started talking on the phone, looking around constantly, like he didn't want to be seen. There was no one else in sight. The whole area was empty. I couldn't see him super clearly from that distance, but something about him felt off. Still, for whatever reason, I got curious. I actually thought about walking over and asking what he was doing, but I held back. Then he popped the trunk, and after that opened the back door. He pulled out a big black bag and tossed it in the trunk. After that, he made another phone call. By then, I was so curious I stepped out of the office to get a better look. Honestly, I was probably just bored from always being alone at night. Maybe that's why I did it. I stood behind the first pump and watched him closely. Both arms were covered in tattoos. Long hair, fit build. He looked like some kind of MMA fighter or something. He didn't see me since I was crouched behind the pump. When he finished his call, he started walking away from the car. I had this weird feeling that something bad was about to go down, but I still kept inching toward the car. Before I could get there, I suddenly saw him coming back, just visible over the wall. I bolted straight back to the station. I think he might have heard my footsteps because this time he seemed suspicious. I went inside and locked all the gates. When I looked again, what I saw completely freaked me out. The guy was now near the pump, holding a gun, looking for me. He was scanning the station, trying to spot someone. I didn't make a sound. I just stood there, frozen, watching him. After a while, he walked back to his car, stuck the gun in his waistband, got in, and sped off. I just sat there in shock for a solid 10 minutes. I didn't call anyone. I spent the rest of the night like that. The next morning, I told my manager everything. First thing he asked was, "Why didn't you call the cops?" Then he called them himself. When the police showed up, they checked the CCTV footage. Unfortunately, the spot where he moved the bag from the back seat to the trunk wasn't covered, but once he got close to the pump, the cameras caught him clearly, and the gun was clearly visible. Turns out the guy didn't have any prior record in the police database. I didn't follow up much after that, but as far as I know, they never found him. Ever since that night, I haven't worked a night shift again. This happened late last year. I live alone in a small one-story house just outside Denver. It's pretty quiet here. 2 bedrooms, a small fenced yard, and one of those old wooden porches that creaks when it rains. I work remotely for a design agency, so most nights I just stay in, order food, and keep to myself. It was raining hard that night, like really loud on the roof. I had just finished a long day of client work and didn't feel like cooking, so I pulled up the delivery app and ordered from this burger place I like. Cheeseburger, fries, and a Coke. The driver's name on the app was Travis. His profile showed a young guy, hat, beard, nothing strange. I got the notification that it'd take around half an hour. I left the porch light on, like I always do, then went to wash up. A little while later, close to midnight, I was brushing my teeth when I got a message on the app. "Hey, I'm outside." I rang the bell. But the thing is, I hadn't heard anything. No knock, no bell, no car pulling up. I walked to the front window and pulled the curtain just enough to peek out. No one was on the porch. The driveway was empty. So I replied, "Think you might have the wrong house. No one's out there." A few seconds later, I got another message. "I saw you walk past the hallway." That one stopped me. I hadn't walked past the hallway at all, but I had walked through the living room, and one of the side curtains there never fully closes. If someone was standing out on the street and watching closely, they could have seen my shadow. I texted again. "That wasn't me. Are you sure you're at the right address?" Nothing came back. Then I noticed something that made my stomach twist. The live map on the app showed the real Travis was still on the way, like 10 minutes out. He wasn't even in my neighborhood yet. So who had messaged me? I stepped away from the window and locked the front door, just in case. That's when my phone buzzed again, but this time it was a regular text. Not from the delivery app. Unknown number. "Why'd you turn off the porch light?" I hadn't. I looked again, and the light that was on a few minutes ago was now off. Everything else in the house was working. Lights, heater, fridge. Just the porch light was out. I started going around the house, locking every window, every door. I shut off the living room lamp and moved toward the hallway as quietly as I could. And then I heard something at the kitchen window, just a light noise, something brushing the glass. I didn't go look. I pulled out my phone and called 911. Told them someone was pretending to be my delivery guy, texting me weird stuff, and now I thought they were outside the house, maybe trying to get in. The dispatcher told me to lock myself in a room, stay quiet, and wait. Officers were already on the way. I went into the bathroom, locked the door, and sat in the tub with the shower curtain halfway across. I know, kind of stupid, but in the moment, it felt safer. I kept whispering updates to the operator. A few minutes later, the power cut out. All of it. The fridge, the lights, the heater. Gone. Even the little charging light on my phone blinked out. I whispered, "He killed the power. I think he's in." The dispatcher said the police were just a few minutes away, told me not to move or make a sound. And then I heard footsteps. Inside, slow, coming down the hallway. They stopped right outside the bathroom. No knocking, no talking, just silence. Then something scraped across the door. Not hard, just once. I couldn't even move. I sat there frozen, holding my breath, phone pressed to my ear. The dispatcher stayed calm. She said the officers were right on my street. And then suddenly, I heard voices, flashlights, radios. They'd come in through the front. I opened the bathroom door and ran straight into one of the officers, told them what happened. They told me to stay behind them as they cleared the house. Room by room, nothing. Back door was unlocked. Side gate was wide open, muddy footprints across the kitchen floor, but no one inside. They stayed with me for a while, filed a report, and said they'd check the cameras from nearby houses. But they never found anyone. The number that messaged me, burner phone, dead. The app, no record of that fake message. It never happened, according to them. The real driver, Travis, showed up while the cops were still there. Poor guy was confused and freaked out when he saw all the patrol cars. He seemed like a decent dude. Cops think whoever it was had been watching houses for a while, probably looking for people who order food late, home alone. I moved out of that place a few weeks later. I still order delivery sometimes, but now I meet them outside in broad daylight. That night, I got lucky. This happened last October, maybe 2 weeks before Halloween. It was a Friday night, and I'd just gotten home from work, late. I was still wearing my hoodie, shoes half on, and I remember microwaving some leftover spaghetti. It was quiet, dark outside. I was watching some dumb documentary I wasn't really paying attention to. And then there was a knock. Not super loud, just once. I kind of sat there for a second, thinking maybe I imagined it. Then another knock. Same volume, not hard, just like, "Hey, I'm here." I wasn't expecting anyone. I didn't order anything, so I walked over, checked to the peephole. It was a guy holding a pizza. Early 30s maybe, ball cap, hoodie, black jeans, just standing there like it was normal. I cracked the door with the chain still on and said, "Yeah?" He said, "Large pepperoni for Amanda?" I kind of stared at him for a second and said, "I didn't order anything." He looked confused and pulled out a receipt. It had my full name, my apartment number, even my phone number printed on it. He goes, "Already paid, no tip, but it's yours." I told him again, "Nope, not from me." He just shrugged and handed it over like he didn't care either way. "All right, free dinner, I guess." And he walked off. I shut the door, locked it. Honestly, I was more weirded out than scared. I mean, sure, I thought it might be a prank, but the receipt had my info. That part didn't sit right. I put the pizza on the counter and just kind of stood there for a second. Then curiosity got the better of me. I opened the box. It looked normal, hot, fresh, greasy. But under the lid was a folded piece of paper. Not like a receipt, it was glossy. Photo paper. I pulled it out and unfolded it. It was a picture of me, from earlier that day, walking near the food court at the mall. Same jacket, same purse, taken from behind like someone had been walking behind me. I just kind of stood there holding it for a few seconds like I didn't even know what emotion to feel first. It didn't feel real, not scary, not dramatic, just off. Like the air got thicker all of a sudden. I didn't call 911. I should have. I don't know. I couldn't figure out what I'd even say. I threw the pizza in the trash, kept the photo, sat on the couch for maybe an hour, lights on, not doing anything. Then I emailed the restaurant the order came from. They replied the next day and said the order was placed through a third-party app, paid in cash online. No customer account tied to it. No note. They didn't have the delivery guy's name, said he was gig-based. So yeah, dead end. 2 nights later, Sunday, another knock. I didn't go to the door this time. I looked through the peephole. Different guy, taller, black hoodie, just standing there, holding a pizza box. Didn't knock again, didn't speak. He left the box and walked off. I waited a full 10 minutes before opening the door, picked up the box with a towel and opened it outside. It was empty. Nothing but an old receipt inside, blank side up. I didn't turn it over, I just threw the whole thing in the dumpster. That night I called my sister and asked if I could stay at her place for a while. Didn't really explain why, she said yes. I stayed there for about 2 weeks. I didn't tell her everything, just said someone was messing with me. When I went back, everything felt stale, like the air hadn't moved. I looked around for anything weird, but nothing seemed touched. I kept the lights on for a few nights after that, but nothing else happened. No more deliveries, no photos, no messages. Just silence. Sometimes I still wonder if it was a prank, or if someone was really watching me. I'll never know. But I haven't eaten pizza since. And I always check who's at the door.